Welcome to the session on Western theories of truth. Today, we are going to discuss on pragmatic theory of truth and introduction. And we have with us Dr. Nasi, former professor and head Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. In this session, we are discussing the pragmatic theory of truth. Pragmatic theory of truth is one of the important theories along with the correspondence theory and coherence theory of truth in Western philosophical tradition. Now, to understand the pragmatic theory of truth, it is important to know what is the meaning of truth. Okay? Truth is a term which has variety of meanings. It can be understood in many ways. Some of the important senses are: truth is a state of being in accordance with fact or reality. Again, it is having fidelity to an original or to a standard or ideal. It can be understood also as in the common usage, it means constancy or sincerity in action or character, and the direct opposite of truth is falsehood. So, these are the common senses in which we can use the word truth. Now, problem of truth is a central topic in philosophy. For example, philosophers often ask the question, what is truth? Just like we ask, what is time? It is interesting to note that the philosophical question is a different question than usually the question is that statement true? We are not asking what is truth, rather than we ask, is that particular statement true or false? Or we say, what is time is it? What is the time? That is what we are, what is the time just now, what is the time? That is what we are asking. Now, philosophical questions take the form, what is X? That is the kind of the format of the philosophical questions. Now, according to Socrates, philosophical questions are terribly important, because if he says, opinion of Socrates, if you do not know what X is, we cannot tell something is an example of X. Okay. He gives an example. He says, if we do not know what a man is, how can we say that Rama is a man? Okay. Or if you do not know what truth is, how can we tell a statement is true or false? Okay, this is the way philosophical questions are put. So, knowledge of truth is important in philosophy. That is why problem of truth becomes an important problem in the philosophical arena. Now, it is to be remembered that the question of truth is discussed in the field of epistemology, one of the divisions of philosophy.
Okay. So, ma'am, what is epistemology? First of all, can you explain what epistemology is? Then that way we can connect it to truth.
Yes. In philosophy, we can distinguish between different branches of knowledge, like epistemology, metaphysics, axiology, etc. Now, here we are concerned with epistemology. The term epistemology is derived from the Greek words, two Greek words, epistem and logos. Epistem means knowledge and logos means science or discourse. Thus, epistemology means theory of knowledge or science of knowledge. This is what epistemology means. All about you want to know about knowledge, how to forget knowledge, what knowledge is true knowledge, what knowledge is false knowledge, the difference between true knowledge and false knowledge. All these things are discussed in epistemology. It is considered as the most important branch of philosophy because it is considered true knowledge. It investigates the problems relating to the origin of knowledge, nature and validity of knowledge, limits of knowledge and the conditions of knowledge. See, all the things that you want to know about knowledge are discussed in epistemology. The sources of knowledge, the methods of achieving knowledge, and the methods of evaluating knowledge claims form the concerns of epistemology. Not only how do you get knowledge, but how to evaluate knowledge, whether this knowledge is a valid knowledge or invalid knowledge, true knowledge or false knowledge. So, this element is also discussed in epistemology. In brief, the problems of epistemology can be stated as follows. 1. Problems relating to the sources of knowledge. What are the sources from which or you can derive, you can get knowledge. And the second problem is problems relating to the validity of knowledge. Whether the knowledge you attained from different sources, whether they are valid or not. You can evaluate your acquired knowledge. So, these are the problems that are discussed in epistemology. And accordingly, we can speak of different kinds of knowledge. So, since epistemology is concerned with the knowledge and its validity conditions, we have to understand what is the meaning of knowledge, or what is that which is known as to know. So, the word know can be understood. It is also to be understood in various ways. To recognize, to identify, to distinguish, to be acquainted with, to apprehend or comprehend a fact or truth. So, these are the meanings that we can give to the word know. So, to know means all these things. It can be recognizing a truth, identifying a truth, distinguishing a truth, or to be acquainted with a truth. So, any of these meanings can be, or all of these meanings can be attributed to the word know. And accordingly, we can speak of three different kinds of knowledge. One, the word know can be used in three different senses. The first one is knowledge by acquaintance. For example, I say, I know my friend John. I am saying that. So, this is an example of knowledge by acquaintance. In this kind of knowledge, we have personal and direct experience with the objects in the world. The object is directly presented to us. Our thoughts and sensations. I know my friend John means I am acquainted with him. Our knowledge of personal feelings and experiences is a kind of knowledge by experience. Not only that we know an object outside, our knowledge of our feelings, our emotions, that they also come under what is called a knowledge by acquaintance.
So, acquaintance means experience.
It is experienced knowledge, directly experienced knowledge. Perceptual knowledge is also knowledge by acquaintance, knowledge through our sense organs, that is perceptual knowledge. For example, we see a color in front of us or hear a sound through our ears. So, these are all examples of knowledge by acquaintance, or direct, perceptual, experiential knowledge. The second variety is called competence knowledge or skill knowledge. For example, I know how to write English is an instance of skill knowledge. This is called know-how, how to do things.
That is, we are acquiring knowledge.
No, we know how to do things, not acquiring. We are trying to put that knowledge into practice. So, I say I know how to write English, how to read English. You may know how to ride a bicycle. So, it is not knowing about the bicycle, you know how to ride a bicycle or drive a car, like that, or to use a computer. So, that is another practical knowledge. So, competence knowledge involves the ability to do something, not only ability to get the knowledge, it is the ability to do something or perform a skill either consciously or unconsciously. It may be unconsciously, we may do, but it is an ability, it is a skill that is called competence knowledge. So, it also comes under the heading knowledge. So, knowledge can be either acquaintance or competence. And third, there is another kind of knowledge, it is called propositional knowledge or descriptive knowledge. Example of proposition knowledge can be stated as, I know that sun will rise tomorrow, or I say that I know that tomorrow it will rain, it is going to rain. So, like that, if you say like that, it is called a propositional knowledge, it is called a descriptive knowledge. Okay. Or it is a form, it has got a format, S knows that P, where P is some statement or a proposition. That is a format of that propositional knowledge. Proposition is the object of propositional knowledge. It is a kind of assertion which claims that something is the case. So, proposition refers to what is being asserted or stated or claimed. Propositions or assertions have truth value, that is, they are either true or false. So, truth or falsity can be attributed to propositions. Truth or falsity is a property of the assertion or assertion of proposition. Truth is the property of an assertion which says that things are a certain way when in fact they are that way. The actuality and our statement, when they agree, we say that it is truth. And an assertion is false when it says that things are a certain way wherein in fact they are not that way. When there is a difference between the actuality and our statement, that is called a false statement. So, the point is propositional knowledge can be either true or false. The truth value is attributed to propositional knowledge. Now, since in philosophy propositional knowledge is very much important, okay, we have to understand the kinds of propositional knowledge. We can distinguish different kinds of propositional knowledge.
So, can you mention these kinds of propositional knowledge?
Yes. Mainly we can speak of three kinds of propositional knowledge. One is a priori knowledge. This is a kind of knowledge that one gets independently of any sense experience. It is knowledge prior to experience, that is why it is called a priori. It is prior to experience. So, it is a type of knowledge where there is no use of sense experience, no eye through eyes or ears, we do not use it, we do not get it. But prior to any of these experience, if you get any knowledge, it is called a priori knowledge. For example, mathematical equations like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, it is an a priori knowledge, it is not an knowledge that we get through our senses. Other examples are in the field of philosophy, we can say Plato's theory of innate ideas. In the philosophy of Plato, Plato is giving theory what is called innate ideas. So, it is an example of a priori knowledge. Then Leibniz truths of reason in the philosophy of rationalism. Philosopher Leibniz gives what is called a truths of reason. So, it is also an example of a priori knowledge. Then see in mathematics again, like the mathematical statement 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, a number of conclusions are in mathematics which are a priori, and also in the field of logic. A priori knowledge is very much in practice. And the second variety of propositional knowledge is called a posteriori knowledge. We can say that it is just the opposite of a priori knowledge, that is knowledge based on sense experience. That is called a posteriori, comes after experience. Knowledge which is posterior means comes after, is contingent. So, the characteristic of a posterior knowledge is that it is only contingent. Means it is conditional, depends on certain conditions. Then empirical knowledge that comes to us from the experience through the 5 senses. This is called a posteriori knowledge. For example, Plato's theory of appearances. Plato's theory of universals and Plato's theory of appearances we know. So, Plato's theory of appearance is an instance of a posteriori knowledge. Then Leibniz has given a truths of fact, just like truths of reason, he has also given what is called truths of facts. It is an instance of a posteriori knowledge. And empirical knowledge of any kind. So, in all sciences we have got a posteriori knowledge, and all these are examples of a posteriori knowledge. Now, the famous German philosopher Immanuel Kant has given another, a third variety of a priori, propositional knowledge. It is called synthetic a priori knowledge. Okay. So, synthetic a priori knowledge is attributed to the contributions of Immanuel Kant. He argued that we have a third kind of knowledge known as synthetic a priori knowledge. That is, knowledge may begin with experience, but does not arise
from experience.
Yes. That is, he says that it has got a starting point. It begins with experience, but it does not end with experience. So, along with experience, you need something more. So, maybe it is a posteriori, the starting point, the beginning is a posteriori in experience, but to be called a knowledge, it must have some a priori elements with it. It must be added with, mixed with some a priori. That is why it is called synthetic a priori. Kant held that our knowledge of mathematical truths and moral laws are really synthetic a priori. That is the addition of Immanuel Kant. He says that all moral laws are synthetic a priori, telling the truth. It is a synthetic a priori statement according to Immanuel Kant. So, epistemology is concerned with the propositional knowledge, and hence questions relating to the nature of truth are basic to epistemology. What is truth? What is meant by saying that a particular statement is true or false? Truth cannot be solely a function of ideas. It is, if it is true that there is a cat in the bathroom, then there must be a cat in the bathroom, not just any idea or impression of that cat. Further, is truth different for different people who have different ideas and intellectual habits? Does it make sense to say that what is true for one person might nevertheless be false to someone else? Since truth is one of the conditions of knowledge and the goal of knowledge, philosophers have attempted to answer the question of what is truth. In the history of philosophy, philosophers have attempted to explain the meaning of the concept of truth in different ways. Various theories and views of truth continue to be debated among scholars and philosophers. There are different claims on such questions as what constitutes truth, what things are capable of being true or false, how to define and identify truth, the roles that revealed and acquired knowledge play, and whether truth is subjective or objective, relative or absolute. So, these are some fundamental questions relating to epistemology and problem of truth. And accordingly, we speak of three theories of truth: the correspondence theory, coherence theory and pragmatic theory.
So, now we can move on to explain what pragmatics is.
Here one thing to remember is that pragmatic theory is the last theory to be advocated. The two traditional theories are the correspondence theory of truth and the coherence theory of truth. And pragmatic theory has been developed out of the difficulties or out of the problems that the other two theories confronted. So, as a remedy, it is a solution to the problems that are faced in the advocacy of the earlier theories of truth, correspondence theory and coherence theory. The modern philosophers, a group of thinkers called pragmatists, they have advocated the theory of pragmatic theory of truth. And therefore, what is the problem with the other theories? Let us have a look at. Okay. The correspondence theory of truth maintains that truth is that which conforms to fact, that which agrees with facts, reality or fact, that which corresponds to the actual situation. It attempts to establish relation of truth and reality. So, a statement, and so I say this is a computer. So, that computer and my statement, there is an agreement. So, that is called a correspondence theory of truth. The problem is, so here is a problem. So, they have explained it, they have established the theory, but pragmatic thinkers have identified certain problems with this. One of the problem is how we can find a correspondence between things that belong to different realms. That is, between two things that are very different in nature. So, you say that there must be an agreement between two things. So, they say that if the two things belong to different realm, then how can there be agreement? For example, problem is how can a mental object like a statement, so my statement, this is a computer is a mental statement, okay, relate to an object that is outside the mind, that is computer. Okay. So, they belong to different realms, two realms, the two objects belong to two realms. The pragmatist raises the question, how can they agree? Because they belong to different realms. Okay. To put it in simple terms, the correspondence theory of truth assumes that definition of truth is in the world. Okay. However, one can object that everything is ultimately in the mind, and therefore, the definition of truth is inside us. Just like the correspondence theory, people say that truth is in the world, outside the world. You can also say the opposite, truth is in the mind, because it is another realm. Truth can be in the mind. If so, it is pointless to look for a definition of truth in the world, and therefore, idealists, the group of idealist thinkers believe this. They say that truth is not outside the world, truth is inside the mind. This leads to a different theory of truth, that they say that truth can no longer be defined as the correspondence to the facts of the world, as the correspondence with the facts of mind. Truth is correspondence with the fact of the mind. A coherence theory of truth states, so this is the statement given by the coherence theory people. Truth of any proposition consists in its coherence with some specified set of propositions, defines truth in relation to thought. So, that is how coherence theory developed, because of the difficulty with the correspondence theory of truth. A statement is true when it coheres with a system of other propositions or beliefs. The contrast with the correspondence theory of truth is clear. Far from being a matter of whether a world provides a suitable object to mirror a proposition, truth is a matter of how beliefs are related to each other. So, that is the difference. The neoclassical correspondence theory holds that truth is a content to world relation. That is a modified version of correspondence theory. It captures this in the most straightforward way by asking an object in the world to pair up with a true proposition. The neoclassical coherence theory, in contrast, insists that truth is not a content to world relation at all, rather it is a content to content, that is belief to belief relation. The coherence theory requires some metaphysics which can make the world somehow reflect this, and idealism appears to be this. So, coherence theory of truth is advocated by the idealist group of thinkers. These theories all attempt to directly answer the nature of the question, what is the nature of truth? So, here after analyzing the coherence theory and correspondence theory of truth, the pragmatist says that what these two groups of thinkers are interested is in the question, what is the nature of truth? Okay? Namely, the nature question, the what question, what is the nature of truth? That is what they have answered. But there is a different question. See, they take this question at face value. There are truths, and a question to be answered concerns the nature of truth. This is what these people have done. In answering this question, each theory makes the notion of truth part of a more thoroughgoing metaphysics or epistemology. Now, explaining the nature of truth becomes an application of some metaphysical system, and truth inherits significant metaphysical propositions along the way. Now, a different perspective on truth is the pragmatic theory of truth, a different way of looking at the problem of truth, which begins by inquiring not about the nature of truth, but about its criterion. See, there begins the difference of or marks the difference of the pragmatic theory of truth. Pragmatic theory of truth does not ask the question what is the nature of truth. It raises the question about what is the criterion of truth. How can you say that something is true or something is false? That the how question becomes important in pragmatism.
Others consider the what question.
The what question. That is, how truth is to be tested. how can you make a distinction between truth and falsity?
Falsity.
That is their concern. Now, the question is how we are to know the truth. The pragmatic theory of truth offers a very practical answer. Any theory or idea is true if it leads to satisfactory consequences. That is the simplest answer. So, this is an answer to the question how truth is tested or how is to verify truth. So, they will say, pragmatist will say that whatever leads to satisfactory consequence, you look at the result, then if it gives you, satisfies you, it is true. If it does not satisfy you, it is false. The marks of truth are satisfactory working, fulfillment of function, successful leading, etc. These are considered to be the marks, qualities of a truthful statement or true statement. So, let us understand what is pragmatism. And before defining pragmatism, have a look at the classical exponents of pragmatism. Pragmatism is a philosophical movement originated in the United States during the latter quarter of 19th century. The term had been coined by Charles Sanders Peirce, an American logician, mathematician and scientist. Peirce summarized his own contributions to pragmatism in 2 articles now regarded as the founding documents of pragmatism. They are The Fixation of Belief and How to Make Ideas Clear. The second exponent of pragmatism is William James, a psychologist and a moralist armed with a medical degree, followed Peirce. James published The Will to Believe and other essays in popular philosophy, The Varieties of Religious Experience, Pragmatism, a new name for some old ways of thinking, and The Meaning of Truth, a sequel to pragmatism. The third major figure in the classical pragmatist pantheon is John Dewey, whose works include Reconstruction in Philosophy, Experience and Nature, and A Quest for Certainty. These thinkers have developed or defined the concept of philosophy. This is what is called the essence of the pragmatist philosophy. What makes these philosophers pragmatists? The answer is not simple, for there is no pragmatist creed. So, that is what makes them unique. There is nothing called pragmatist creed. That is, no essential tenets endorsed by all pragmatists and only by pragmatists. So, pragmatism is a philosophical movement, a new attitude and a new method of approach to philosophical problems. So, these words are very important, significant in the context of philosophy. Traditionally, philosophy is understood as a theoretical discipline, too far removed from the practical concerns, too metaphysical and scholastic. Right from the time of the Greeks, philosophers were interested in the world as a ready-made, perfect and beautiful something to be enjoyed or worshipped. Pragmatism insists that we need a philosophy as the science of human interests and values, a philosophy of action, doing and experimenting, achieving and overcoming. Accordingly, they are interested not in an astronomical universe, the cosmos, the world which the physical sciences try to penetrate, but the human world, the industrial world, the world of human affairs. Hence, pragmatism always puts emphasis upon what is practical, efficient, useful, fruitful and satisfying. So, pragmatism is distinctly a philosophy, it is very clear. It is not metaphysical, it advocates no metaphysical theory, but holds all metaphysical systems in suspicion. It is a tendency and a movement rather than a philosophy. Well, pragmatic movement it is called. It is an attitude and a habit of thought, looking forward to results rather than backward to first principles. Everything is to be judged by its fruits or consequences. Thus, pragmatism holds that any idea or theory which does not make a difference in its practical consequences for us is not significant. A great number of philosophical controversies, theories or systems do not make any difference or cannot be tested. All these theories are to be dropped or they fade away under the criterion of pragmatism. William James says, a pragmatist turns his back resolutely and once and for all he runs away from abstractions and insufficiency, from verbal solutions, from bad a priori reasons, from fixed principles, closed systems and pretended absolutes and origins. He turns towards concreteness and adequacy, towards facts, towards action and towards power. That means the empiricist temper is regnant and the rationalist temper sincerely given up. It means the open air and possibilities of nature as against dogma, artificiality and a pretense of finality in truth. Traditional philosophy is concerned with definite and certain ideas or ultimate principles like God, matter or soul. This is how we can make a distinction between traditional philosophy and pragmatism. Pragmatist inquires into their cash value, put the ideas to work and see what consequences they may yield. If they will not work, they are not true. In actual life, we have always to deal with definite concrete situations. These situations are to be met and solved on their own merits and not on the merits of abstract traditional principles. Further, everything changes. There are no fixed or final moral laws or eternal principles of knowledge. Reality is in the making. Life is a series of problems to be solved and a succession of struggles with real difficulties. Hence, to think is to deal effectively with these problems and ideas are tools to help in the solution of these problems. So, this is a summary, sum and substance of the philosophy of pragmatism. And this leads us to the pragmatic theory of truth.
Now, ma'am, can you mention some main points in this session?
Oh, yes. In this session, we have actually discussed the background of pragmatic theory of truth, where we made a distinction between the traditional theories of truth like correspondence theory and coherence theory. We found that pragmatic theory of truth is something different. The main difference that we found is that the traditional theories are raising the question, what is the nature of truth? And those theories are simply an answer to the question of regarding the nature of truth. They assume that there is truth and they try to explain the nature of truth. Whereas, pragmatic theory of truth is raising a different question. Their concern is, what is the criterion of truth? So, how will you know that something is true? How will you verify truth or how will you find out truth? So, that is about the criterion, namely the how question. So, this is the sense in which we can say that pragmatic theory is unique. And this standpoint of pragmatic theory of truth is typical of their theory, the philosophy of pragmatism. And in the philosophy of pragmatism, what they do is they are against all metaphysics, fixed theories, principles, and they are for what is called consequences, action, fruits, results, consequences. What they say is that if a theory is not working, not useful to solve a problem, then that theory is a useless theory. The problem solving is their mode. Philosophical questions, philosophical theories must help us in finding solutions to the problems of daily life. That is the major thrust of the philosophical movement of pragmatism. This is what we have discussed in this part of the topic.
Okay. Now, ma'am, we can assign some questions for students from this session.
Yes, you can.
First one, explain kinds of knowledge. Second, discuss classical pragmatism. Third, account for coherence theory of truth. Fourth, examine the nature of truth. And fifth, comment on the pragmatist criticism of the earlier theories of truth. Okay, ma'am. Now, can you suggest some references for further study?
The students of philosophy can go through any volume of history of philosophy, of Western philosophy, both traditional and modern. There will be a chapter on
Theories of truth.
pragmatism, and where we find pragmatic theory of truth also, and in particular philosophy relating to American philosophy. Any volume relating to American philosophy they can find. Now, for the beginners, I can suggest two books. One is Introduction to Philosophy by Patrick. It is a very good introduction to the beginners of entering to the field of philosophy, where you can find pragmatism and pragmatic theory of truth. And there is another very good account of the topic on Introducing Philosophy by Robert C. Solomon. A separate chapter is dedicated for that, and you can go through that. So many sources are there, and these two sources are very easily available, and they can use it.
Thank you, madam, for participating in this session.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this session. Let us meet again with pragmatic theory of truth in the another session. Thank you.
Thank you.